All right, welcome everyone. Um, I think most people are coming in. My name's Wyatt. I run sit reps with Kyle and with Max, and we're super stoked for the meeting we have tonight. Oh my gosh, JD, the the mustache. Great. So we are going to first start off with just a very short um, kind of FYSA from Vika at Leland. They're doing a pretty awesome thing right now for vets during the government shutdown. So we've worked with Leland literally for the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, however long they've been doing it. And we will never be a complete coaching service. I don't ever plan to, deal with the ass pain that is matching everyone with mentors. So we just tell them there is a fantastic startup that a for vets, for anyone really, whether you're doing product management, whether you're doing consulting, banking, or you just want help. So Vika, I will turn it over to you really fast, and then we will jump back into the panel itself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Wyatt. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Vika at Leland. I will just take a couple of minutes to let you guys know what we're up to and how that could be helpful to you guys, especially as you're thinking about transitioning into civilian life. Let me share my screen. So, as mentioned by Wyatt, Leland is effectively a coaching marketplace with a lot of bells and whistles now attached, growing into what we hope to become the home of ambition. So if you're planning to transition into a new career path, join a grad school, prepare for a test, we cover all these categories and more with over 2,000 coaches who are priced from everything from like $30 an hour to a lot more than that. And who are also hosting a whole suite of free events, about 200 per month that we're now hosting, which are intended to be really valuable standalone deep dives into all the different components of these different goals. So you can look through these, search for the ones that you're most interested in. Maybe it's something very specific you have in mind, like a master's program. Maybe you're looking for a life coach. That's not our most popular category, but it does exist. So the free events is sort of one thing that is always going to be free, available, open to all. This very special thing that we're doing right now, and I'm really grateful for SitReps, to SitReps for helping us propagate, is this campaign we've launched today in response to the government shutdown. We have so many veteran coaches on our platform and so many students as well, applicants. I personally have been a coach for MBA and law school on the platform for 2.5 years and developed a small but mighty suite of veterans who I've helped get into Kellogg, Harvard Law, and go on to do really, really well in the civilian world in roles like software engineering. So we love the impact that we've been able to have, and we want to make sure that while you're locked out of getting some of those services and support from the federal government, from the VA, you can still get advice from someone who can help. So there's this landing page that you can gain access to if you just DM me on LinkedIn or email me directly or go through Wyatt. I think Wyatt, you guys have some kind of like
Yeah, if
service.
you if you go to the link in bio of the Instagram page, you'll see it's the very first link. Just sign up there. Vika has that access. You can DM her on LinkedIn. I think you can share that in the chat.
Yeah, I can drop my profile here as well. The only reason we're doing that verification is just to make sure you're a real person and, get like kind of very are eligible for this offer. But we have over 100 sessions that have been pledged by coaches on our platform specifically for this initiative. So if you fill in like a short form, we can basically make sure that you're matched to the right coach for whatever your specific goal is. So I'll drop this into the chat. I've also sent a PDF to Wyatt that hopefully will make it to you guys that has just like a overview of what I just shared, and then also a discount code in case you do decide to stay with your coach and continue to work with them, we're offering $50 off, no strings attached, to anyone who's joining through SitReps. So the first session is free. We hope that the 30 minutes will be valuable and get you started. Like, we know firsthand that 30 minutes can be enough to change the trajectory of someone's life, especially at this kind of important moment. So I hope that this is useful to you. Please reach out with any questions, and hope to see you on the platform or on our free events soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vika. I can I can attest myself, that they do incredible work at Leland, and you have access. I mean, it's a marketplace, right? So you're not using Leland as much as you're using awesome folks. It's a great complement to other places like Service to School. I would say use them all. I mean, the former CEO who's on Service to School is also on Leland, Alec Emmert, so you can chat with him there. But use everything you have at your disposal, right? So it's pretty awesome that John reached out, said that they had a bunch of folks that wanted to give help. So want to make that that kind of the first thing we talk about. So thank you so much, Vika. Next, this guy will be on our panel, but the next piece is we're going to welcome a man who JD. Oh, I think who is sharing.
Oh, I think that's my fault. I think I was trying to change the setup. Let me figure out how to turn that off. That's my bad.
All good.
User error.
Hold on.
Hey, Wyatt.
Okay, cool. JD, we will turn it over to you now. JD Modric is our preferred partner for VA home lending. We've done entire webinars, but I just wanted to let him kind of kick this off real fast, kind of overviewing what he does. Many people get freaked out as they're getting out, buying homes, selling homes, PCSing. Should I buy? Should I sell? We just wanted him to take a couple minutes because that's something that most people get afraid of, and you only do it, yeah, not a single inappropriate image drawn. That's true. I was actually very impressed. So, and I will say, Nick is a very cool guy. This was not this is Nick. Nick is on our panel and works for one of the coolest AI companies in the world. So, he gets a mulligan for that one. He's a very, very good friend of SitReps. So, JD, I'll let you take it real quick.
Hey guys, JD Modrak. Did the MBA thing after I got out, and have taken a very different path in life. Now doing something that requires basically a high school degree, maybe a GED, and mostly focused on VA lending. Do all types of loans, but really 80% focused on VA loans. And I think especially prescient for a group of transitioning service members, because talk to a lot of vets or soon to be vets who a lot of times are looking and believe that one of the first three things they need to do when they get out of the military is buy a home. And I would argue that that's almost never in the first three things you should be looking to do, especially if you're going to grad school, getting an MBA, or have a meaningfully higher kind of income trajectory 2 to 4 years from now than you have today. It's almost always better to rent. Like, life at this stage brings just a ton of uncertainty, and real estate and uncertainty in rates of 6% plus, and in probably 20 to 30% of the markets in the country right now are arguably in a recession. Certainly over a quarter of the states are in a defined recession right now. It's just a really dangerous time to buy. And what makes it more dangerous is when you're not attached to the real estate for a defined amount of time. If you don't have really great runway with wherever it is you think you're going to end up, or you don't have any of the inputs known that would establish that runway, it can be a really dangerous time to buy. And so we spent quite a bit of time with transitioning vets just talking through what are those things that need to be true before you even make the buy decision. And even if it's a subsequent one, even if you've bought a home before, this advice might still apply or might even further apply to you. And especially as it pertains to the VA loan, because a lot of people think, oh, I'll just use the VA loan again and again and again. But once you've used the VA loan once, as long as you keep that asset under that VA loan, the power of the VA loan is meaningfully diminished. And so you're kind of hamstringing yourself if you're making a decision using your VA loan earlier in life, earlier in your career, or at a midpoint in your career where you're having to take a huge pay cut. The power of that loan just isn't nearly as meaningful. So really often come to sessions like this to caution people to assume that like buying a home is some automatic natural life good, and like give yourself some time and space to focus on the career stuff, to focus on like what's next and kind of your values, and don't really often worry about real estate if you can avoid it for this 1, 2, 3 year period as you're transitioning and trying to figure out what's next after the military.
Great. So now you all see why we like JD. The fact that he is speaking against his own interest is kind of amazing. Which was the way that he talked to me, you know, when I was first talking to him, and other Sit Reps followers are like, this guy's telling me not to buy his stuff. And we were like, wow, that's nuts. Most real estate people are the best time to buy was yesterday. JD's DMs are always open on LinkedIn. He's been a fantastic help for people that, you know, when you do want to buy a house, or if you do think you do, he will be able to help you figure out, should you use the VA loan, should you not. So like I said, he's kind of our exclusive partner, or he is the exclusive partner, because he's earned the trust of our community. We've had a lot of people go through him. So Zoom does have way too many features. We'll now jump into the actual panel. Some more stories, some hot takes from people who have transitioned, have done it pretty well. We'll start by just having each of our panelists introduce themselves. I think JD said he'll be sticking around. But we'll start with Stephen Spake, then we'll go to Court Harris, then Nick, and then we'll round this out with Max. If y'all could just give brief introduction, starting with the enlisted representation. Spake, can you in your incredible beard take that away? Spake was my platoon sergeant, by the way, for anyone wondering. Looked a lot different, super baby faced back when we were in.
Oh, you look like a giant 10-year-old, so I'm going to take that with a grain of salt. Hi, everyone. My name is Steven. I served 10 years in the Army. I was one of Wyatt's platoon sergeants. I got out as a Sergeant First Class about 3 years ago. I know this is a big education group, so I have a couple bachelor's degrees. I have a master's in epidemiology. I have my MBA from Georgia Tech, and then just applied to a few doctoral programs. I currently work in perioperative management consulting at a boutique firm. We've got like 11 or 12 W-2 folks and a handful of contractors as well. And it's a ton of fun. Prior to that, I worked for a big box consulting company and hated my life. So I've gone through some shit as a civilian, and have landed in a very good place. So if I can impart wisdom or answer stupid questions, I'm here for it. Thanks for bringing me on, Wyatt.
Court.
Yeah, hey, good to see you, Wyatt. Sorry, I didn't know there was a facial hair requirement to be a panelist. So give me another couple weeks and I can join a panel. I'll grow out the beard. But Court Harris, West Point, 2007, served about 6.5 years as an artillery and logistics officer. Did the vacations to the Middle East and Afghanistan. Got out in 2013 into consulting. Then got placed at a startup in Chicago by a recruiting firm. A couple years later, made an exit from that company, and actually ended up going to work for the recruiting firm as a chief of staff. We primarily put people in finance positions, so think investment banking, private equity, commercial banking, corporate finance, etc. Excited to be here. Hope I can impart some knowledge. We are not a JMO NCO placement firm. Veterans are only about 1% of our placements. We're primarily focused just on the finance function. But because of that, we see a lot of veterans who are coming out of their MBAs that are looking to go into a finance role. So happy to be here, and look forward to adding value.
I think I'm up next. Hey, everybody, I'm the dude who got the whiteboard up and running and messed that all up. I'm Nick. I went to the Naval Academy, studied cyber operations. I was a Crippy for 5 years, spent some time on submarines, worked at some intel agencies, and then ended up leaving the Navy because I had a buddy who was working at SpaceX. And he basically was like, you should just apply. I was like, okay, I guess I will. And so I applied right after that call on a Sunday. They got back to me on a Tuesday, and in the interview asked when I would be able to join. And I said, oh, not till 9 months from now. That's the earliest I could join. And they said, oh, thank you. Have a nice day. Goodbye. And they ended the call after 5 minutes. So I kind of sat there and like, what the heck just happened? And basically had this epiphany moment. I need to get out of the military and into tech. And so ever since then, I slept on that for a night and then went into work the next day and dropped my resignation and started the whole process. So now I'm in San Francisco and I work at an AI company called Replit. And then on the side, I'm building a tool to kind of help veterans transition as well.
Yeah, which the company Replit that he works at, if anyone wants to have their mind blown, go make websites for fun. I got on there today with the person that's helping with their SEO to make the new and improved SitRep site, and it was probably the first use of AI that's ever like all this other stuff, ChatGPT, Claude, like looks very weak compared to what I was able to do in like 20 minutes in Replit, which was like design the most powerful websites I've ever seen. So seriously, it was nuts. And I'm not saying that because Nick like, has a referral code. It's just really nuts. So I am saying it to look out for the new SitRep site in the next few weeks. Finally, Max, we'll round you out.
Hey everybody, it's good to be here. I went to VMI, graduated in 2016, studied civil engineering there. Then I served as an infantry officer in the same airborne unit that's as Wyatt and Steven. After I got out of the Army, I got out as a captain, got out, did, well, first I worked as a civil engineer for a little bit for the state of Alaska, hated that. Then I went and did some stuff with the Ukrainian military for about a year. Then I came back, worked at a couple of different tech startups doing sales. Then I started helping Wyatt and Kyle out with SitReps. Now I'll do that full time.
Great. So thank you to everyone for coming again. I'm going to hit on the first, which I guess maybe I should share my background briefly. Hopefully, I'm not talking too much, but I was also an Army officer, obviously Max and Spake alluded to. Served in Alaska, went to Wharton, got my MBA, worked in private equity operations for about 18 months, and then quit to do SitReps completely full time. So we are now acting as a platform aimed to be the place where vets in business can find what they need to succeed. And then on the other side of the platform, we're a full service recruiting agency. So we find vet and place high performing vets in mostly defense tech and private equity. So we've learned a ton about what employers actually want and how messy the labor marketplace is. So hopefully we can I can impart some of that. But first thing that I heard from a bunch of our panelists is they hated their first job. They got out and they realized I do not want to do this thing. We'll start with you, Spake, because that was your first thing to say. Two-part question. Why did you hate this so much? Second, do you think that some vets need to maybe get used to the idea that you're going to hate your first job, whether that's consulting or banking? Is that a requirement, or should vets kind of aim to go and do something they love? So, Spake.
I'll answer your second question first before I forget your first one. So I think that vets should approach their transition with as few preconceived notions as possible. Be comfortable with the idea that you may not enjoy your first career. It was a great job. It paid well. I was well compensated. It just wasn't a fit for me. I don't want to feel like a cog in the machine. I want to feel like something I'm doing actually matters. And it was just too big of an organization. I came from an area with small organizations in the Army, and that's what made them effective. And to go to one of the largest corporations on the planet just sucked. So I would say, don't get hung up. If you don't like it, quit. Go do some other shit. There's plenty of things to do. And if you don't like any of the things that are out there, go make your own thing. But yeah, as few preconceived notions as possible. And I forgot your first question. I tried real hard, man.
No, you answered it. I asked
Oh, go me.
why did it suck? Yeah. How long were you at that big box consulting company?
363 days.
Yeah, so just about a year.
Which just shy of a year.
Yeah, I will say from my perspective, it is a good idea to not employers do not like frequent job hops. Banking and consulting is one area that a year is kind of like we get it.
Yeah.
So that's my take. Court, you seem to not hate your first job. Maybe you actually did, but you've kind of not you're not doing exactly what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Also, if people go to your LinkedIn, they'll see a bunch of other random things like being the chairman of a board of an airport.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how did you kind of think about your first job? What do you wish?
Yeah. So that's a great insight, Stephen, first of all. So, let me start with saying, as a firm that places people, right, dealing in human capital, I will say companies' openness to spending less time in roles or at companies is much greater than it was when I transitioned out in 2013, right? So 2013, if you didn't have a year and a half in a role, you were kind of gonna get the side eye, right? When you went into a job interview, right? That's changed considerably, right? A lot of that's post-COVID, work from home. A lot of that's just Gen Z, millennial type stuff. But to the point that was made, if you don't like something, like staying in it, if you don't need to from a financial standpoint, isn't gonna help you, right? So pivot as quickly as possible, right? Fail fast, as they say in the startup world. So the first job I had was IT consulting, coming out of the military as a logistics officer. Had no idea what I was doing. Went to go work for a West Point grad-owned boutique consulting firm, right? So I think that's my first unsolicited piece of advice: is you're gonna find your first job or any other job more through relationships than by just blanket applying on LinkedIn or on a website, right? So use the military network, the veteran network. But I got in and was doing Oracle implementations. Really had no idea what I was doing, trying to learn on the fly. And then we got acquired by a big box consulting firm like 6 months into my tenure, right? So I got a little bit of luck in the sense that, 6 months out of the military, I was making, gobs of money, already had kind of like an acquisition on my resume, but definitely wasn't for me. Wanted to be more on the relationship side, more on the sales side. And IT consulting was very heavy into technical, sit in the basement, do a lot of coding type stuff, right? So realized I needed to make a pivot towards something more person-based or more relationship-based, right? It took me a little bit to figure that out. And when you come out of the military, you're not going to know exactly what you want because most MOSs don't transition directly over into the private sector, right? There is no 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo MOS in the private sector, right? So it may take some time to figure it out, but nobody cares. Nobody cares where you started off transitioning from the military when you're 27, right? When you're 60 years old, 50 years old, you're not going to remember how long you spend in a role at 27. You're going to figure out what you want to do for a career and make a career out of that, and you're going to be at work for a long time.
Yeah, great advice, Court. I appreciate that. Nick, you are kind of in a place, fast-paced AI startup. Um, how in the world does someone get into a role like that, coming from the military? Are there certs? Is it experience? Is it schooling? What would you say? Because a lot of people obviously want to get into tech. Money's good. It's cool. Work in an air-conditioned place. It's nice.
Yeah, the ride to get here was kind of wild. And a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was preparing myself to be ready for when the opportunity had come. And I think for me, I'll just tell you the quick story of like how I ended up here. I was actually at a party in San Francisco. I'd moved here while I was working for Booz Allen. But he said, "Hey, I'm going to move to San Francisco. I'll keep working remotely for you." And I did that for a bit. But then I went to a party and ran into this dude named Matt. And I was telling him about this project I was doing on the side, Veteran Timeline. He's like, "That's so cool. You should actually totally build that on Replit." And I said, "That's a great idea. What is that?" And so he said, he set me up with a demo, and somebody gave me this demo, and his name was Cody. Cody was actually a former Marine. And I, at the end of it, was like, "Holy cow, this is the coolest shit I've ever seen. Do you guys need any help?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're actually growing the sales team. You want to go do sales?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, let's do it." And basically, he ran me through a set of 3 interviews all in 1 week. And then the following Tuesday, I got the job offer. And it was only because I was ready to dive in, talk about how I had some past sales experience, talk about my technical background. I had a project I could talk to. I'd done a ton of work looking into the platform and what it was offering. So a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was preparation, and being ready to like jump on the opportunity when it came and basically perform at that right time. So in my case, I had a technical enough background that I was dangerous, and then I was personable enough to be in sales.
I will also add, Nick, I like the juxtaposition there that you were literally ready. You were like, "I'm moving to SF. I am prepping to start next week if someone asks." comparing that to vet Nick, like I don't know what your 03. What's the 03 in the Navy? Is it like it's like a
The
lieutenant?
lieutenant.
Lieutenant?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I always mess that up. Lieutenant Co, who was like, "Can I start in 9 months?" Which I see that a lot from vets that apply for jobs. They're like, "Will they wait for me for 9 months?" That's not doable, right? So I just love that you actually were like, "I am putting myself 100% in the position to jump at whatever comes at me." I think that's
It was crazy. I when I got the offer on Tuesday, they said, "Okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks," and then I joined them 2 weeks later and left Booz Allen that quickly. And I was like, "Whoa, this is a whirlwind!" But it was a really rapid succession, and that's how quickly life can change when you're ready for it.
Yeah, it's so different than the military, which conditions you to like get orders, prep for a few months, show up at your next unit. Your unit's not ready. So yeah, advice to anyone transitioning, like don't apply to jobs 9 months out. You won't get there's very few that you can get that are outside of very, very large companies. The reality is most companies do not have the ability to forecast headcount until they're like a month or two out. Max, I'll go to you. Your background, like you said, you kind of did what you thought just you were supposed to do. Didn't work out. Now you're complete 180 from where you thought you'd be maybe as a lieutenant and as a as a cadet at VMI.
Yeah. Well, kind of like most of these other gentlemen, I've kind of jumped around a little bit. I so I made the mistake I think that a lot of vets make when they get out of the military. Um, Especially officers. I think a lot of us tend to think for some reason that we have to go do whatever we got a degree in. I studied civil engineering, so even though I was an infantry officer and I really liked, the operate that having that very operational, leadership job, I thought I had to go be an engineer. I thought I had to go study to, take the professional engineers, test and ended up hating it. One reason I hated that job is because it was a good job, but a lot of the reasons that I left the military were still were at that job. So I went from one bureaucracy to another. A lot of things that frustrated me about the Army, having to get approvals for everything, things moving slow. That was working for a state government. It's all the same problems. And then forgot what your question was, Wyatt, but I'd like to kind of talk about kind of like how I transitioned into into tech sales. Kind of like Nick, it was kind of just me putting myself right place, right time. I had come back from Ukraine, decided I wanted to get into tech sales, so moved to a place where I knew there was tech sales jobs, moved to Lehi, Utah, and then actually, it was a combination of, me presenting myself the right way, like Nick, and then also being right place, right time, and also having a connection to help me get my foot in the door. So Wyatt actually played high school football with the guy that started a legal tech company. He was their CEO. They're, tech companies are almost all companies are almost always looking for good salespeople. Um, I wanted to get into tech sales. So I had, asked if Wyatt could intro me. We ended up hitting it off, and then they were pretty nervous actually. They actually they were like almost didn't hire me, but I was able to make the case that I'd done hard things and I'd faced adversity before, and I wasn't gonna care about making cold calls, or I wasn't gonna like run away at the first time somebody tells me no. So was able to get that job in tech sales, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to talk too long.
No, great. Yeah. Then you got a few promotions and now you're on the sit reps team. So
Yeah,
um,
and things like Nick said, things like and like you said, Wyatt, things like move super fast in the civilian world. It's like you can get a job in like a week, so it's like totally different. And also
or you can have to wait for months.
or you can have to wait, but yeah, but I also want to say that like you should really be ready to go when you're trying to apply for jobs. And like, one thing we've seen doing all the recruiting efforts that we're doing is, having like applying for a job and going through the whole process. And then like you can really fumble the ball at the end if you're not like actually like going to like actually ready to go, if you're not ready for a few months, or if you like haven't actually talked to your wife, or, if your timeline doesn't line up, like actually pay attention to that stuff, because companies are looking to hire people like soon.
Could you also touch Max and Court? I want to bounce this to you as well. Geographic flexibility.
Yeah, this is This is huge. I know it's frustrating. You know, that was one of the reasons I got out of the Army. I wanted to have more agency over my life and be able to pick where I lived. But, you know, only having like one location, especially if it's a place where there's not a lot of jobs, like if you're trying to go live in like Omaha or Honolulu or some place that's hard to live where there's not a lot of jobs, it's going to be hard to find a good high paying job there. So, you know, especially, you know, you can't be too picky. You can't be really picky when you're coming out of the military. You kind of have to take what you can get, especially get that like first job or two. It's really hard because you don't have any experience, or companies are kind of taking a bet on you. So, you know, we unfortunately see a lot of guys getting out. They're like, oh, I have to be in Austin. Everything like I have to be in Austin. I'm only going to go to Austin, or I have to be in some random place like Knoxville, Tennessee. And we're like, and I'm often like, I'm sorry, man. There's just not, I just can't help you there. But, you know, if you're willing to go to like these 4 other places, I could help you out. So being open to relocating and understanding that it's kind of like doing a deployment or something. Like you can go there, you can just go do a job for like 12, 18 months and then probably kick out somewhere that is more close to where you want to be from there. But like not being willing to move is gonna like disqualify you from a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. Court, what do you think
Yeah,
about
I mean,
that
it's
as a
a great
recruiter?
question, right? Because you're transitioning, right? You're trying to, find something that you like. Presumably, some of you are getting out of the military for either work-life balance, right? Or, maybe you're a stud and you're not getting promoted faster than your peers, and you want to go do something and crush it, and you really want to do something, but can you be picky? Can you not? Right? So it's a great question. Anytime that you limit yourself at the top of the funnel, you're just putting restrictions on the probability of success, right? The P-win, right? So kind of as Max said, if you're talking to me, for mentorship, right? And you're like, hey, I want to get a finance job, but I want to live in Huntsville, Alabama, and I want to work remotely, right? Sure, right? You will find something at some point. There will be something out there, right? But the ability to work in finance in Huntsville, Alabama remotely is way lower than if you're like, hey, I'm willing to go to Manhattan, right? And go in the office 5 days a week, right? So it's really a personal preference of, where do you want to limit your opportunity? I would argue that at the top of the funnel, you want to get as many, discussions with people, entry-level screenings, job interviews, whatever term you want to use. You want to get as many of those as possible, and you want to make a decision at the end. Don't make the decision to limit yourself at the beginning of the search. What I can tell you from kind of empirical evidence, jobs that are fully remote are drying up, right? They're out there, right? Somebody on this call is going to say, oh yeah, I'm fully remote or whatever, right? They're totally out there, right? But just as a rule, just data, right? The number of remote only jobs is materially lower than it was 2 years ago, right? Most companies are still in that hybrid, 2, 3, 4 days a week. Some companies are back in office 5 days a week, especially in finance. But figure out what your non-negotiables are and start there. And I would just argue, as you're coming out of the military, be a sponge, soak everything up. Don't get on a call and say, well, I got to be in Nashville, or I got to be in Austin, or, I got to be remote, right? Discuss that with your family, your spouse, whatever, at the back end. Get in the door first and have conversations and try to get the offer and then make the decision.
100%. JD, I'm going to bounce it over to you because you're someone that moved from a very, very beautiful place to a cold place. And you kind of figured out a way to not do a traditional MBA background. Would love to hear kind of what brought you now to being the VA loan specialist guy.
Yeah, I mean, doing a lot of things wrong. I think, some of my happiest friends right now got straight out of the military and became farmers. One's a hunting guide in Idaho, right? And in some cases that was just like what they thought to do, and maybe it wasn't the best move for them. But for some of the folks that are truly happy, it was like they started not with like, what are all of the top of funnel widening things I have to do, which are all largely correct that we've discussed in this call. But like, I can't believe I'm going to say this, because honestly, when I was in your guys' shoes, the people I hated listening to most were the people saying about what I'm going to say. If you don't understand what the fuck it is you want out of life, it's really hard to make some of these decisions and decide what direction you want to go. And like, I actually had my shit way more together when I made the decision to get out of the military, but then I kind of like cast that to the wind when I got to the MBA program and just started either chasing dollars, sexy career decisions, labels like startup, owning a P&L, and I kind of forgot what it was I was trying to get out of life, how much money I needed to get in order to do those things, and like where I wanted to do them from. And so like I've taken a number of roles once I figured that out that were frankly steps back because I wanted to try something different, try something that was better for my family, try something that frankly was just going to be a hell of a lot more fun, which is kind of where I find myself now. And certainly there's sacrifices. And I think every time you take advice, like from people like a panel like this, you have to first know like what that advice is going to require of you. And if you're going to ignore it, what it's going to turn off or turn on. So like, if you're going to be geocentric, like you have to understand that it's going to eliminate 60, 80% of the jobs you could potentially take. If you know that you want to make 220K plus, 250K plus when you first get out of the military, you have to know you're turning off 90% of the potential roles. If you know that you eventually want to make millions of dollars, you have to know, you have to probably talk to 50 to 100 people as you're getting out before you've made any decisions to understand what are the skill sets you need to acquire to be that $500,000 a year earner. Because I can tell you, I know a lot of people that have worked really hard in life and are not going to ever make $500,000 to $1 million a year because they didn't get the roles early enough and specialize soon enough to make some of those things happen. And they didn't realize they weren't building those skill sets. So like, I think a lot of times you're just like, you know, Max's story. It's really interesting. Like, I think usually when you're new to all this, you think, oh, it's going to be really hard for me to replicate Max. Yeah, you got to have a ton of surface area. You got to be on the phone nonstop. I knew I wanted to be a consultant. I talked to 100 consultants before I ever talked to a consultant at business school. Almost all of them veterans, almost all of them cold DM'd on LinkedIn. And I knew exactly what was going to happen to me when I became a consultant, and I didn't mind the pain, right, Wyatt? I ended up hating it even more than I thought I would, but like it's at least I knew exactly what I was getting into, and I knew that I was trying to keep that top of funnel as wide open as possible for a few years until I figured out what the hell it is I wanted to do with my life, and eventually decided like kind of prioritizing money and a few other things wasn't as important to me. But I didn't establish those things early enough, so found myself meandering a lot, I think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think you know, Spake also talked about how much he hated large consulting. I'm going to go to you, Spake, now for the next set of questions.
I'm gonna respond to the last one.
Yeah,
more.
talk first.
I think it's important to keep in mind that there are different versions of the same thing. And if you hate one version of it, you may really enjoy another. When I quit Accenture, I said I would never go into consulting again. You'd have to drag me over hot coals, over my dead body, would never do it. So the past year and a half, I've worked in consulting, and I absolutely love it. And it's the coolest damn thing. And I get super geeked on what I do every day, and I have so much fun with it. So you can have different versions of the same thing, and keep that in mind. If one version of it sucks, go find a different one. Food for thought. Now to your questions, Wyatt. Sorry about that.
Yes. Also, I love that an Accenture email is responding to you in the chat.
That's fine. I'm sorry.
I
I hope you love it.
You know, most people don't, but it's a great place to be from, or an okay place, or whatever. Existence is pain. Yeah.
Yeah, because everything you do after looks better.
So, next question. A lot of people, you know, wonder as you're getting out, how do you, you know, you talk about like networking in. We made a post just about this a day ago, actually. There's a lot of these veteran resource groups, veteran support groups. There's places that will, you know, bring you in. How useful are those? You know, how should you treat those? I guess I'll just start there. What do you think of those sorts of groups? You probably had them at Accenture. I think you led one of them, or you
Are
did.
you talking like associate network groups?
Yeah, that's what you call them
Okay.
there. The veteran helper.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're so there's some organizations that do it, like the ones you were referring to, and then some large organizations have their own internal veteran support groups. Which one do you want me to talk on? I'll go to the big one too.
Internal.
I took over. All
Yeah,
right.
the internal one.
The big ones that kind of like hawk in and poach you as you're transitioning from the military. I was not a big fan of those personally. I think it threw them off. I was an oddball getting out. I was enlisted, but I had 3 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree because I'm a nerd. And they were like, cool, you should really set your sights on like a retail associate or maybe an EMT. I had 4 different organizations tell me that. And I was kind of like, all right, fuck you guys, I'm doing my own thing. So I very quickly lost interest in almost anyone else's opinion on my transition. And I honestly have kind of maintained that. So the other side of that is when you get into an organization that has groups dedicated to supporting veterans, if they're like anything else, if they're good, they're good. If they suck, they're going to be bad. And the company I'm at now is owned by a large enterprise, the largest healthcare enterprise in Georgia. And they had a group that I got involved in when I started working there, and I didn't agree with their direction. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. So I told the chief human resources officer, I was like, look, I tried to be involved, but they kind of suck. I'm not interested. But if you ever want someone to take it over, give me a holler. And about 8 months later, I got an email that was like, hey, you're in charge of this now. And I was like, all right, cool. Here we go. But now we do some cool things with it. We built a veteran transition assistance team that works directly with civilian recruiters that are recruiting for corporate jobs places on how to understand veteran resumes, maybe a little better than most civilian TA people would, or building a mentorship program internally for newly hired vets or transitioning veterans to people that have worked for the enterprise for a while. So I think there's 2 different types of organizations, and whatever flavor works for you works for you. I just didn't like the corporate partners or whatever the hell they were. But maybe officers have a different experience. That's a whole different ballgame.
Now I'll throw this over to Court. Since you are kind of head of veteran programs and you deal with a lot of this kind of stuff. I think it's a super nuanced topic, but would love to hear what you think.
I think Stephen just proved the point that there's a wide variance across orgs, right? Stephen gives a shit and he made a difference in his org and he did something outside the box, right? I would say that's not the case in all VRGs, VERGs, whatever you want to say, right? Let me make a comparison to grad school, right? So some of you on the call may be thinking about grad school, right? Let's say you want to go to Kellogg. I'm in Chicago, right? You want to go to Kellogg or Booth. I have a Northwestern grad degree, not Kellogg, but I'm a Wildcat, so we'll use Northwestern, right? If you want to go get your MBA at Kellogg and you're a vet, the first thing you should do is find out who's in charge of the veterans network at Kellogg, or someone in the group, and place an email and say, hey, I want to talk to you. How can I get into Kellogg, right? Similarly, if there's a company that you want to, or you're interested in, you should find somebody that's a veteran at that company that's in their VRG, right? Hey, tell me about XYZ company. Can you give me any tips on the process, whatever, right? Oftentimes that'll help you get in the door with some sort of screening, getting past that so you can get in the interview process or whatever, right? Just to be clear though, most of the time those groups aren't the decision makers or the hiring managers for most of the roles, unless it's one of their specific roles that someone's posting, right? So they're valuable, right? The experience will differ though based on each organization, right? So if you get somebody like Steven who's doing a great job, it can be super helpful, right? There are also the flip sides of that coin there are oftentimes VRGs in large companies that are there kind of for show and optics and PR only, right? So the best connection, and JD I think mentioned this earlier, the best connection you can make with somebody if you want to get into a specific company is a one-on-one email or LinkedIn message to a vet at that company, right? And try to do it one-on-one via LinkedIn and get on a call or get on a Zoom and talk to that person one-on-one.
Yeah. I think that brings up the next question. Nick, I'm going to throw this to you first because you didn't do an MBA. And I'll probably take it over to maybe JD. A lot of people have questions. Obviously, we tell a lot of people, look, if you don't know what to do, like take a knee in a way that no one will ask a question about, which is get a grad degree. MBAs make a lot of sense, but like no one's going to wonder what the hell were you doing for 2 years when you were unemployed if you can point to getting a degree. So if you're completely clueless and you're like, I just don't have a clue, you can be a masochist like Spake and go and work and get an MBA at the same time. Not an executive, mind you, but we'll jump to him. But Nick, you didn't get a grad degree, but you found a great job. What would you say, would you have done it differently? How would you tell people to evaluate that decision?
Yeah, I think my hot take is I actually think MBAs are a little overrated. So I didn't want to sit in school for 2 to 3 years and just like do more theory. I wanted to like keep doing stuff and not just sit around a classroom and like kind of talk about these theory and academic perspectives all day. Like I wanted to do the stuff. And then when I even thought about myself, like, do I want to like go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, or do I want to like get paid for my hours? I like opted to go to the get paid route. Obviously, for me, I ended up having like 50% of my GI Bill, so I could have made it work. But for me, I was just I wanted to value the experience that I would have gotten and the time like doing stuff more than I wanted to be in school. And so in many cases, I often talk to a lot of my friends, and it's the exact same story that you've just described, Wyatt, which is like, I don't exactly know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this for 2 to 3 years. It's going to help me with my soul searching time, and then give me some like room to breathe around like, okay, now that I've kind of like surveyed and looked around, it's a safe way to kind of do some of that exploration. But in my opinion, I really valued like doing the experience a lot more, getting my hands dirty and getting into the thick of things rather than like being in an academic classroom. I did get into a grad program. I got into UVA's systems engineering program, and I kept deferring that. And I was like, I just want to get into my first job and just get after that. So that was kind of like the angle I took around grad school. Oh, you're muted.
Spake, you just couldn't decide, so you did both. What was your decision making there? How would you suggest people think about it, and what do you think of the usefulness?
Yeah, I just really like school. So it wasn't that, it was a lot of work. I did 12 to 15 credit hours a semester for 1 year while I was working for Accenture. And the second year when I was working at the enterprise I work for now as a project manager. It was terrible with Accenture. When I transitioned into that new career at a place that really I enjoyed working, I just said, hey, sometimes I, have to study a little bit, or I have to, go take a test early. And they were incredibly supportive because they understood that me getting that MBA only allowed me to contribute more to that organization. I will also say, and I can only attest to my MBA experience, there isn't anything mind-blowing in it. I think for me, the largest benefit to that program was that it really was my education on how to interact and discuss at a business and social level with the civilian population, because I hadn't done a lot of that in 10 years. And it was an interesting, it was more of like a character development 2 years than it was, an educational development. Because a lot of the principles are just refinement of common sense and best practice. But learning how to interact, and I went to Georgia Tech, so it's a top 20 program, but it's mostly engineers. And I've had to figure out how to talk to the nerds of the nerds at this school, which is something I hadn't done before. So moving into consulting, where I do a lot of data work, and we have some offshore organizations and hospitals, it was important for me to understand how to communicate my ideas and concepts in a way that was palatable. Because you can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know how to say it, it's going to fall on deaf ears and no one gives a shit. So that's what it was for me. MBA was character development, not that I needed more of that.
JD, you did the full-time thing. What are your thoughts to round this out?
Yeah, I'm definitely in the camp of like, it's not a bona fide good, but I think there's like a lot of things that have changed over the years that can shift that. Like, not to make things overly financial and decision making, but obviously like the proliferation of voc rehab and some of the loan forgiveness programs that have gone on, especially if you have the right disability levels, make it much more of a no-brainer in my opinion. And like, even I think my argument would be to a lot of people that are like, I just want to go start my own thing. Well, then go get a free MBA while starting your own thing, because there's at least 4 to 6 vets at Booth and Kellogg that I work with every year that are running their own businesses while they're at Booth. I don't think the times of like taking the 80s college approach to MBA programs are as smart anymore, where you just barely recruit, you party a lot, you just socialize a ton. Certainly there's some value there, there's some enjoyment there, but I think you should be putting in at least 60 hours a week if you're in an MBA program, because you are falling behind, and your studies should take 30 max, maybe 35 at Booth, because it's the hardest MBA program. But like it literally, a lot of MBAs don't study, they barely do homework. And so you should be figuring out what else it is you're going to do with your time while you're in an MBA program and maximize the value of that 2 years if you do decide to do it. Sorry, my daughter's just pulling up to me. But the other thing I would say is why, like, I think that you just got to kind of keep your finger on the pulse for these things, because a lot of MBA programs kind of rise and fall with the economy a little bit, and also with like the proliferation of VA programs. I think I was told the other day that like 7 or 8 out of 10 voc rehab applications are getting denied for MBAs now.
The Chicago office, voc rehab's a crazy system. It needs to be systematized. We've actually been talking with the VA about this, because yeah, some offices will blanket approve, some offices are iffy, others are just, if you have any degree, you don't qualify. So it's definitely not, it's definitely something to think about. As you go forward, do the calculus. Is it worth it to get this? Do I think that my earning potential, like, it might be worth it to take loans depending on the type of job that you want, right? So you need to kind of think about that. For a job like sales, you don't need an MBA. No one will care. They care, will you get kicked in the dick repeatedly?
If you are entrepreneurial though, why, I think one thing I would say is, if you're like very confident you want to start your own business someday, like, the MBA, it's not really about the learning there. It's about the connections and the propensity to fundraise. Like, we could go raise every building we've ever bought in like 15 minutes using simply our MBA connections. And like, it takes no time at all. And frankly, now when you're talking about like huge tranches of mezz debt, or like one of my friends needed to secure like $100 million loan for his business, like, it took him probably 1/10 the time, because he went to Harvard and dropped out, than it does your average non-MBA to get that same type of lineup done. And so, like, if you know you want to absolutely kill it highline in life, or you want to start your own thing, like, the MBA I think is a lot. Just the connections are insane. But if you're somebody like me who doesn't need most of those things, like, it doesn't make nearly as much sense.
So next piece, we'll go to Max to kind of round it out. We're nearing the end. Want to just talk about the key things, like the tactical things that, we've talked kind of high level jobs and everything. Disability, moving, timeline. I think disability is one that a lot of people talk, I always tell people, be honest and truthful and let the VA decide. But Max, would love to just kind of hear the tactical things that, need to get done.
Yeah, I would say, or can you guys hear me? Okay, cool. Got some thumbs up. I would say, yeah, definitely don't wait 2 years to file your VA claim. Not speaking from experience or anything. Yeah, definitely make sure you file a claim. Best way to do it is do it while you're still in. For those of you that are still in, do like I think it's like BDD process or BD process. Like, try to get it done while you're still in. And also, like, actually go to sick call and get stuff on your medical record. It's exponentially harder the longer that you get from service to get anything to be proven as service connected. So that's kind of the VA piece. Also, like, I think the best way to figure out the VA stuff, it's kind of a black box, but in my opinion, the best way to figure it out is connect with some of the guys that you serve with, maybe that were a couple years older than you. Kind of pick their brains and see if they can connect you to anybody that's kind of gone through the process and walk that path, and then see if they can talk to you and get and square you away. I'm also happy to help, talk to anybody on this call. Feel free to, DM me on LinkedIn, or email me at max@sitrepsatstiercos.com. Happy to help walk anybody through it. Now, keep in mind, I do get bogged down, doing all the sit rep stuff, so it might take me a little bit, but I try to always get back to everybody. So that's kind of the VA piece. Definitely don't like take yourself out of the running. A lot of vets, like, for some reason, self-select out of things, like thinking that they're not competitive for a good school, thinking that they're not going to get a claim, or thinking that they're not going to be a good, be able to get a good job or whatever. I think a lot of vets are like a little too humble in that regard. Just like file a claim, see where it lands, try to get into good schools, do the best you can. Don't take yourself out of the running. And then I would also say, I don't know, just like try to, sorry, I'm getting a bunch of, want to see what you guys are saying. I feel like I'm forgetting stuff.
1 second.
Wyatt, what else did you ask? I know you asked about the VA stuff.
Just timeline. Maybe jump over to JD
Yeah,
and then
JD, take
Court
it.
kind of round it out. Appreciate it.
Timeline on VA claims. Wyatt?
I think he's just talking like getting out, transitioning.
Yeah, I think just quickly touch on the VA claims. File that absolutely as early as you can. You're better off getting rejected and being told you gotta wait another 3 months. I think it's generally 6 to 9 months. Like I think one of the smartest things I ever did when I got out of the military is knowing I was getting out a couple years early. And I don't know where most of you guys are in your transitions, but starting to network, I had like 600, 700 connections on LinkedIn before I was probably even 18 months from getting out. I got lucky to meet some lady who was a LinkedIn guru, and I was probably having 3 to 5 conversations a week with people a year, 2, 3 years, ideally, not much further beyond me. I feel like there's a real recency bias you can take advantage of. Like people 20 years removed from your position aren't all that useful. And just set like a goal to have a certain number of conversations and stay on top of that goal for a year or 2 years or 3 years. And if you only got 6 months till you get out, pick 50 convos, double that normal pace, and just start having as many conversations with people as you can. And sometimes even with people who might not be doing jobs that you think are fascinating.
Oh, Wyatt, I'll piggyback off of that since we're talking very granular. Up in the chat about halfway through, I put kind of like the toolkit of what you want to do with your email and your LinkedIn profile stuff, right? Here's the only 30-second war story I'll give. Like, if you can do all that stuff, you're going to be better off than 75% of transitioning vets. It's like being a PL and getting into your platoon. And as long as you show up on time, do really well on your PT test, and don't screw around sexually with your soldiers, you're going to be better than 50%. Like, do all that stuff. You'd be amazed how many people I get that still have emails that are like gamer69@AOL, right? Like, that's a no-go, right? So professionalize the stuff that I mentioned. JD said it earlier. Max said it as well. Spend time on LinkedIn and just use a Boolean string to find veterans either in the geographic location you want to be in or at the company you want to be in, and just schedule meetings. Learn how to talk to people. And then the last thing I would say is learn basic private sector finance. Nobody in the military does private sector finance, even if you're a finance officer, right? Understand what profit and loss is, understand income statements, balance sheets, because in the private sector, everyone here has identified they want to be in the private sector, right? Not education, not necessarily nonprofits. In the private sector, the goal of an organization is to make money. So everything goes back to the finance function. So learn a little bit about that. There's plenty of resources online for free where you can learn some of the 3-statement model stuff.
Gonna be reporting to another guy.
Hey, Spake, could you kind of round it out with your final thoughts?
Sure. I know earlier, I think one of the first comments said was that, take what you can get right off the bat, or an interpretation of that when it came to finding jobs, take what you can get right off the bat and just go. I think fundamentally I disagree with that because that's what I did and it screwed me. And the way I wish I had approached it is, the whole military career for the most part is take what you can get, and you don't even get a choice. Like, you just get shit heaped on you most of the time. And it was really the first opportunity I had in my adult life to ever pick what I wanted. So I went through different options and I waited, and there was a little bit of like dwell time between, when my last day of service was. Unfortunately, I had like 140 days of ETS leave. But I would be particular about what I ventured into, knowing what I know now, knowing what my red flags for large corporations are, knowing that I prefer to work for a smaller organization that plays a vital role in society, in my opinion. So I wish I had known the red flags when I got out and then picked something that was aligned with exactly what I wanted and not just took what I got right off the bat. So sorry, I disagreed to whichever one that was, but also I said at the beginning I was going to, so I just stuck to my word. And I think the hardest thing is to get out properly, you have to give a shit. A lot of us have been kind of eyeing exit from the Army for 6 months, 12 months, a year and a half. And no matter how high speed you are or want to be, you kind of start to not give a shit in most scenarios most of the time. Your transition is something you definitely need to dedicate your time, attention, and willingness too, if you want to do it adequately. Especially if you're trying to set not just yourself up, but if you have a family as well, or dogs plus ex-wife, whatever. Just give a shit would be my suggestion.
Nick, do you want to close us out?
So yeah, let me drop some bombs here. The military is all encompassing in many aspects of your life, some of which you don't even think about. I think the biggest three are your sense of identity, where you get your purpose from, where you get your and find your community, all the way down to like the low tactical level things of like where you get your groceries and what you wear day to day, and where your money comes from and where you get your healthcare, to even the fact that it's like where you get your TSA pre-check. And all of a sudden, if you don't plan for all of these different aspects, the military rips that away from you. And now you're kind of left with all these different pieces that if you didn't fill yourself, kind of feels empty in some way. And so the sooner you can start planning for all these aspects of your life that the military encompasses currently, the easier that transition out will be.
I also just want to add, it's going to be hard and messy. It's just kind of hard. Don't expect it to all be sunshine and rainbows. It might kind of be hard for a couple years.
Yeah.
I feel like it took me a good couple years before I kind of felt okay and felt like I knew what the fuck was
Still
going on.
figuring shit out. So it's okay not to feel okay.
Yeah,
Like
same.
I said in the chat, I'm not sure how to go see a doctor if I get sick. So I just go to urgent care. I haven't figured shit out yet, and I work in healthcare. So there's still blank spaces.
Well, to anyone that has any questions, our pages, DMs, shoot them over. We'll shoot them up. We'll help you out. Anyone on this call, they're also more than willing, I know from experience, to answer people's questions. We've got some cool stuff coming up with Court. If you are thinking about getting into an MBA program, there's some really cool kind of programs we're going to be launching for people to apply to. So it's going to be pretty cool. And then of course, if you want to buy a house, JD's your guy. He may tell you not to, which is a real trip for those who are used to talking to most in the real estate game. But thank you to everyone for coming by, and we will continue to do a webinar next month, so TBD. But if you're in Colorado Springs, by the way, we have a meetup coming on the Wednesday the 29th. And if you are, Max, where else are we doing them? Salt Lake City, November 5th.
Salt Lake City. And then we got the Army Navy party and the symposium before the Army and Navy game in Baltimore.
Yeah, we got Senator Dave McCormick coming to that. We've got Blake Hall, founder of ID.me, coming. Oh yeah, and then LA, November 16th. So we're doing that with UCLA and USC Bets Clubs. So thanks everyone to coming through, and yeah, we'll see you at the next one.